For centuries, debates have surrounded the question of whether Jesus was truly regarded as divine by his earliest followers. But recent archaeological discoveries in Israel have shed light on one of the most astonishing pieces of evidence yet. Inscriptions dating back nearly 2,000 years, carved into decorative mosaics, that explicitly proclaim Jesus as God himself. Even more striking, these words were not left by foreign converts or later Christian rulers, but by the very people of Israel, just a few generations after the crucifixion. The story began in 2005 when an Israeli archaeologist conducting a routine excavation in the northern part of the country stumbled upon something extraordinary. The site, which had functioned in modern times as a prison complex, concealed beneath its foundations an ancient artifact, a richly decorated mosaic floor. During restoration works, workers noticed faint inscriptions carved in Greek letters, preserved across the centuries under layers of soil and stone. As the inscriptions were carefully analyzed, experts realized they were not ordinary decorations. They contained explicit references to Jesus Christ, not merely as a teacher or prophet, but as God Jesus Christ. Scholars believe these mosaics once formed part of a primitive Christian prayer hall, possibly one of the first built in ancient Israel. The inscriptions are estimated to date back to around 180–230 AD, less than 2 centuries after the crucifixion. This means that already by that time, groups within the Jewish population had embraced a radical truth that Jesus was not just the Messiah, but divine in nature. One particular inscription stands out. It records the dedication of an offering table, reading, "And the lover of God, aptoisis, has offered the table to God, Jesus Christ, as a memorial." Historians suggest that aptoisis was likely a wealthy and influential woman in her community, remembered for her generosity. By donating a table for offerings, she left her faith etched into history, and with it, one of the earliest written testimonies directly calling Jesus God. The implications are breathtaking. This discovery places the worship of Jesus as divine not in distant lands influenced by Roman or Greek culture, but in Israel itself. At a time when Judaism and the emerging Christian movement were in constant tension, some Jewish communities appear to have dedicated altars and places of prayer exclusively to Christ. For archaeologists and theologians alike, this pushes the timeline of devotion to Jesus as God much earlier than many had assumed. It is no longer just the witness of the New Testament or later church writings. It is a physical, tangible artifact, stone and mosaic crying out from the earth with a confession of faith. Naturally, not all will accept this interpretation. Within Judaism, Jesus has never been officially recognized as divine. Other religions, such as Islam, honor him as a prophet but deny his divinity. Yet this discovery demonstrates something powerful. Even in antiquity, there were Israelites who proclaimed Jesus as Lord and God. This testimony does not rely on later translations of the Bible or centuries of theological debate. It comes from ancient believers who, without the benefit of councils, creeds, or church institutions, already grasped the truth of who he was. Their devotion was raw, direct, and deeply personal. What makes this discovery so moving is not just its age, but its clarity. It reminds us that the proclamation of Jesus as divine was not a later invention. It was a conviction held by his earliest followers, passed down through communities that dared to inscribe their faith into stone. Archaeologists now date the mosaic inscription to around 230 AD, on the time when Christianity had not yet become the religion of empire. This was long before Constantine, long before church councils, long before theology was systematized. And yet here, in the soil of Israel, ordinary men and women were already declaring, Jesus Christ is Kwahibao. This remarkable find doesn't just confirm a historical belief, it offers a window into the heartbeat of the first generations of Christians. It shows that from the very beginning, faith in Christ as God was not a distant idea, but a lived reality, proclaimed in worship, etched into stone, and handed down through time. The discovery of an ancient mosaic floor in Israel has left both historians and believers astonished. This is not just an artifact, it is a voice from the past, proclaiming that Jesus Christ was worshipped as God himself, centuries before Christianity was ever legalized in the Roman Empire. At the time this mosaic was created, around the year 230 AD, the word Christian was barely known. The religious landscape of the Middle East was dominated by Roman traditions and Jewish faith, while the Christian movement itself had not yet formed into a structured institution. And yet, right there, in the soil of Israel, a mosaic floor was laid with an inscription that clearly proclaimed Jesus as God. What makes this all the more striking is the location. This region would later become the stage for theological debates and councils, where the very question of Christ's divinity was fiercely contested. Paradoxically, long before those debates ever began, this mosaic quietly testified to what some of the earliest believers already held as truth, that Jesus was and is divine. When the Israel Antiquities Authority identified the site, archaeologists quickly realized they had found something extraordinary. They began careful excavations, eventually removing the mosaic with millimetric precision. To preserve it, the artifact was transported to the United States, where it is now displayed in the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. today. Visitors in North America can stand before this ancient treasure, marveling at its delicate patterns and reading with awe the inscription that openly declares Jesus as God. Yet, this may not be its permanent home. Israeli authorities have already announced their intention to repatriate the mosaic once the restoration of the old prison site, beneath which it was discovered, is complete. The vision is to transform the area into a sanctuary and spiritual tourist site, where pilgrims from around the world can come and witness this extraordinary testimony of faith. Experts estimate the mosaic may be returned to Israel within the coming year. For those who follow archaeology and biblical studies closely, this discovery is not just fascinating, it is deeply moving. Archaeologists are not simply unearthing fragments of the past. They are uncovering tangible proofs that reinforce the reliability of the scriptures. For centuries, Christian faith has rested primarily on the writings of the Bible, texts painstakingly translated from Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. Scholars, theologians, and scribes dedicated their lives to preserving these sacred words. Yet in the time when this mosaic was made, there was no compiled Bible. The people knew the Torah and other Abrahamic texts. And still, even then, some Israelites recognized in Jesus something far greater than a teacher or a prophet. They saw signs, words, and miracles that convinced them he was the living manifestation of God among men. This is why the discovery of this mosaic is not only a historical milestone, but also a spiritual confirmation. It reveals that long before Christianity was officially recognized, there were already people who fully embraced the mystery of Christ's divinity. History reminds us that many parts of the Bible have been lost to time. Some fragments were destroyed in wars and persecutions. Others disappeared without trace. We may never know the full scope of the original accounts. Yet what has survived has been enough to form an unshakable conviction. Jesus is truly the Son of God. What is remarkable today is that archaeology is uncovering fresh evidence, physical, tangible testimonies that confirm what countless believers have always accepted by faith. These discoveries not only affirm that Jesus existed, they also testify that he was worshipped as divine from the very earliest days. The mosaic in Israel becomes, therefore, more than a historical artifact. It is a whisper from the stones themselves. A message etched in time, proclaiming that Jesus was not merely a prophet, not merely a rabbi, but the eternal God who carried the sins of humanity and offered salvation to the world. For modern believers, this discovery should be more than an academic curiosity. It is an invitation to faith. Perhaps someone watching or reading about this today is searching for a sign, a reason to believe. This mosaic, buried for centuries, may be that sign. And here lies our responsibility to share the message. Every comment, every like, every share spreads the testimony further. Platforms like YouTube thrive on interaction, and each small gesture can help this story reach people who may never have heard the gospel before. By simply sharing, You could be the bridge that brings someone closer to God. The ancient mosaic of Israel reminds us that faith in Jesus as God is not a late invention of councils or empires. It is a conviction so powerful that even in the earliest centuries, believers risked everything to proclaim it, and they left their testimony written in stone. As new archaeological evidence continues to emerge, one truth echoes across time: Jesus is, and always has been, truly God. And perhaps, in the silent witness of these stones, we hear again the eternal call to believe, to share, and to keep the light of Christ alive for generations to come.